One of the areas that we haven't talked about, what we'll today, are the benefits for higher education. Many of these well-intended, many of these used effectively. For example, there's a lifetime learning credit for graduate courses and other classes. There's a Hope credit for undergraduate expenses. There's the American Opportunity Tax Credit, temporarily replaced the Hope credit, but that is set to expire. There's just a raft of confusing proposals that are designed to help people who want to work through their education and can get tax credits for the expenses that they pay. So this is well intended, but what has happened here is that there's a confusing mess of how these are applied and how they are used. The Treasury Inspector General for tax administration determined that the IRS paid out billions of dollars in potentially erroneous education tax credits to more than 3.6 million taxpayers. So Congress has passed a law. They've adjusted the tax code to give credits and benefits to those who are going to school to get graduate education, get post-secondary education. This is a worthwhile use in the most cases, but it has been deemed by Congress to be so and made part of the tax code. And yet, the Inspector General who looks at all this has said it has become a ripe area for fraud, waste, and abuse, as well as some honest mistakes. And I want to repeat that again. The IRS paid out billions of dollars in erroneous education tax credits to more than 3.6 million taxpayers seeking these credits. Now, you say, well, what do you mean? What are some of the mistakes? Students who weren't eligible for the benefit got the benefit. Institutions that received the benefits were ineligible for a number of reasons to receive the benefit. In most cases, higher education institutions send out returns known as 1098-Ts to taxpayers who pay for the tuition. These forms help taxpayers and the IRS determine if students qualify for the education tax benefits, including by indicating whether the student is enrolled more than half-time or as a graduate student. In other words, including whether the student qualifies for the tax benefit. And they found out that billions don't qualify, but nevertheless receive those benefits. Inspector General report said 2 million taxpayers did not submit the form or have the form, the 1098-T paperwork, to indicate they had actually paid the tuition. And of these, almost 40,000 taxpayers received credits for students who were under the age of 14. These are for post-secondary education. There may be a couple of genius kids out there that are enrolled in college at the age of under 14, but I don't think there are very many, if any. And yet, many under the age of 40,000, under the age of 14 or over the age of 65, unlikely to be undergraduate students. Additionally, tax credits were awarded improperly to 2,100 incarcerated people. How do we correct this? Well, there is a pretty basic idea here that I'd like to propose. Many of us are familiar with the letters that we receive back when we make a charitable contribution. And most of us know that if that contribution is over $250, the IRS wants to know that you have proof that you have actually made that charitable contribution. And so your tax preparer and so forth always ask, do you have the receipt? Do you have the letter back from Boy Scouts or your church or whatever, wherever you give the money? Do you have that available for when we might have to need it if the IRS requires and they're looking into that? Well, so what we're proposing here is simply a requirement that taxpayers who claim a tuition tax credit have proof that they've actually received the credit and are eligible to receive the credit. And that proof is the 1098-T form. So we're proposing here that we would simply require that taxpayers hold a valid T98T or some form of substantiation in their possession when they fill out their tax returns and claim tuition benefits. Now, the Joint Committee on Taxation estimated that this very simple requirement would save $576 million over the next 10 years. Now, compared to the billions that we have already proven that we can save by better management of taxpayers' money, we're going to add another $576 million to this. And as you see, we're on the way to $100 billion of savings through some very basic and simple modifications and changes in our tax code and in our procedures in terms of how we run this government. Next week, we'll be sharing again with the Fraud and Waste of the Week, but Congress now has a pool of funds that are misused and a way in which we can either, as I said, offset needed spending programs or return that money to the taxpayers or not have them send it in the first place. It's a dysfunctional government that can't better manage taxpayers' funds. And if we're going to gain the credibility and the support from our taxpayers for what we do that is right, we need to stop and pay attention and look and change and modify the abuse that is taking place and bring it to an end. Demonstrate that we are looking out carefully for the use of taxpayers' dollars.